Alright, so today we are going to start circles. So if we look at this diagram at the top of parts of a circle. So clearly you could see what I am tracing in purple. Okay, so the important parts of a circle. The length from one side of the circle across to the other side, that is called your diameter. So that's all the way across the circle. Your radius is half of the diameter. So if you were to take your diameter, split that into two sections, one of those sections would be called your radius. Okay, the point right in the middle of the circle, that is called your center. Should be easy enough to remember. And then two measurements associated with circles are circumference and area. So your circumference is the measure of that outside of the circle. Okay, so that's your circumference. And then your area is this area that I am shading in purple. It is the inside of the circle. Okay, so area is inside of the circle, circumference is outside of the circle. So some vocab. The line segment that goes from edge to edge through the center of a circle. So I already told you that is your diameter. Okay, you will need your diameter to figure out the rest of this lesson. The line segment that goes from the center to the edge of the circle. This is also half of the diameter. Okay, that's called your radius. The distance around the outside of the circle, that is your circumference. The measure of the inside of the circle, that is your area. The ratio of the circumference to the diameter of the circle, or this symbol right here, that is called pi. Okay, and then again, that symbol is the symbol for pi, and we will need that also. Pi is approximately 3.14 because it takes little more than 3 diameters to go around the circumference of any circle. Okay, so when we see pi, we're going to use 3.14. Okay, so special relationships within a circle. So this is just kind of how the circle relates to itself. So the diameter is 2 times the radius. So if you had a diameter of 10, your radius would be 5, because 5 times 2 gives you 10. Or it could also be said the radius is half the diameter. Okay, if we had a diameter of 10, divide that by 2 and we get 5. Okay, and it says right here, the circumference is about 3 times the diameter. Okay, that's what this statement says right here that I'm putting a star next to. The diameter is 1/3 the length of the circumference. The circumference is about 2 times the radius, and the radius is about half the circumference. Okay? So these are the key words that you're going to need for this unit: diameter, radius, circumference, and pi to start. Okay, so diameter, radius, circumference, and pi. That is what we are going to need to kick off this unit. Okay, again, if you need to take time to jot some of this stuff down, go ahead and pause the video, and then when you are ready, you can go to your next page. Okay, so the first important thing that we need to do when it comes to circles is to figure out, when we look at the circle, are we given the measurement of a radius or a measurement of the diameter? Okay, and if you look right here, I wrote that the radius is half the length, and then your diameter is the whole length. Okay, so if we look at A, this line is only going halfway through the circle, so that is your radius. Okay, all I want us to do is just recognize your radius or your diameter. Okay, so your radius is 5 mm, stands for millimeters. Okay, if we look at B, this line is going all the way across, so that is your whole length, so that is your diameter. Looking at C, this is halfway across, so we are given your radius. D is all the way across, so that is our diameter. E, halfway across, so that is your radius. F is all the way across, so that is your diameter. Okay, hopefully you could see the difference. The ones that are halfway across, that is your radius, versus the ones that are the whole way across, that is your diameter. So go ahead and answer G, H, I, J, K, L. Pause the video to answer those. And then when you have answers, start the video again to double check your answers. All right, so hopefully you have answers on your paper. We're going to double check. So this one is all the way across, so that is your diameter. H7 is halfway across, so that is your radius. I, all the way across, so that is your diameter. Halfway across for J, so that is your radius. Halfway across for K, so that is your radius. All the way across for L, so that is your diameter. Okay, again, hopefully we can see the difference. Your radius is halfway across the circle, your diameter is all the way across the circle. Okay, so let's get into calculating your circumference. Okay, so we need two formulas. We need C equals pi times D, or C equals 2 pi r. Okay, and the formula is going to depend on if we are given the diameter or the radius. If we are given the diameter, we're going to use C equals pi times D. If we are given the radius, we're going to use C equals pi, or 2 pi r. Okay, so those are the difference. This is when you're given the radius. This is when you are given the diameter. Okay, so let's take a look at this sample problem. We're looking over here at this circle that is labeled with 5 inches. So number 1 is asking us, what is the circumference of the circle? So in order to do that, we first need to think about, are we given the radius or the diameter of that circle? So that 5 inches is from side to side. Okay, so we are given the diameter. All the way across is your diameter. So 5 is your diameter. Okay, so which formula should we use? So let's look up underneath circumference formulas, and we're going to find the diameter formula, which is C equals pi times D. Okay? And for pi, we're going to use 3.14 so we can get a concise measurement. Okay, and then this is how we're going to work out the problem. So first we're going to write our formula. So our formula is C equals pi times D. Then we're going to plug in the numbers. So for pi, we said we're using 3.14. And our diameter is 5. So in your calculators, we're going to do 3.14 times 5, and we get 15.7. And then just make sure we have the correct measurement, which is inches, so 15.7 inches. So what is the circumference of the circle? 15.7 inches. Okay, we are given all of the information that we need to solve this. We just need to make sure we are putting it in the right places. If you need to pause the video to get any information, please do that before we move on. Okay, so looking at number 2, what is the circumference of the circle? So here is our circle, and we have a measurement of 4. So first we need to think about, are we given the radius or the diameter? So we are halfway across the circle, so 4 is our radius. So we are given the radius. Which formula should we use? So our options are C equals pi times D, or C equals 2 pi r. Okay, since radius starts with an r, we want the formula that has an r in it, so we're going to use C equals 2 pi r. Okay, so let's work it out. Write your formula. Our formula is right here. C equals 2 times pi times our radius. Plug in the numbers. So take out what we don't need and put in what we do need. So we have 2 times, remember, pi is going to equal 3.14. So 2 times 3.14 times your radius, which we're looking at the circle to get the number 4. Then we're going to multiply all that together. 2 times 3.14 times 4, and our answer is 25.12. Okay, so step 1, write your formula. Step 2, substitute in your numbers. Step 3, 25.12, and we need to label it with inches. Okay, and why does this make sense? It makes sense because 2 times 3 times 4 equals 24. So the answer is slightly larger than 24. And it is slightly larger than 24 because it's 25.12. Okay? If we were to multiply the exact amount of pi 3.14 in, that's where we get the 25.12. Again, if you need to, pause the video and write down the information that you need. Okay, looking at example 3, what is the circumference of the circle? So we're looking over here at this circle with a measurement of 6 centimeters. So which are we given, the radius or the diameter? You are given the radius because it is halfway across. So which formula should we use? Should we use C equals pi times D? Or should we use C equals 2 pi r? Well, we should equal C equals 2 times pi times r because a radius starts with an r and there's an r in the formula. Step 1, write out your formula. C equals 2 pi r. Step 2, substitute in your numbers. 2 times 3.14 is what we're using for pi, and your radius is 6. So we could go ahead and multiply 2 times 3.14 times 6. Sorry, I need to grab my calculator. 2 times 3.14 times 6 equals 37.68 centimeters. And this answer makes sense because 2 times 3 times 6 equals 36, and that is slightly smaller than 37. Okay, we'll do one more together. So looking at number 4. Okay, remember your two options are pi times d and c equals 2 pi r. Okay, so what is the circumference of the circle? This is the circle, and we have a measurement of 2. So think about it. Are we given the radius or the diameter? So the 2 goes all the way across the circle. So that is your diameter. So which formula should we use? C equals pi times d or C equals 2 times pi times r. Diameter starts with d, so we want the formula that has d in it. So C equals pi times d. Okay, step number 1, write your formula. C equals pi times d. Step number 2, go ahead and put in your numbers. So 3.14 goes in for pi. 2 goes in for our diameter. 3.14 times 2 is 6.28, and the measurement on that is meters. Okay, and then why does this make sense? It makes sense because 3 times 2 is 6, and 6 is slightly smaller than 6.28 meters. Okay, so then you guys are going to go ahead and attempt 5, 6, and 7. Okay, remember the two formulas you need are C equals pi times d or C equals 2 pi r. So you use the first one when you're given the diameter, and the second one you use when you're given your radius. Okay? Go ahead you could stop the video and work on 5, 6, and 7. And when you are done with 5, 6, and 7, let me know and I will check your answers in person.